All right, so if anybody's joining me this afternoon, welcome. Kind of a random Thursday afternoon stream. I think I'm going to keep it pretty short, maybe an hour and a half, something like that. However long it takes to get through these two replays that I wanted to show. Actually, I just wanted to look at the replays for myself because they were interesting matches. I wanted to see if I could have improved anything. So I just started a league with this list, and I believe it's the list that I played against Death Shadow. That's maybe the first replay I'll look at, and then the previous replay was against Crabvine, sort of a dredge deck, but running the crab that gets the graveyard filled up, and Vengevines and carrion feeders and blood gas and stuff like that. So I took out a couple Okos and put the two Teferis from the sideboard into the main just to see how it feels. With those couple extra spots, I put Disdainful Strokes back up to 3 and brought in a second Veil of Summer. The card is very strong when we want to bring it in, so I'll go ahead and jump into the first replay, which, as I mentioned, is going to be against Death Shadow. So I've got to resize this window for you guys. Now, let's see. Can I open this here? Maybe not. All right. So this was against Death Shadow. I would call it Sultai with red, but I think people are still calling it Grixis with green. Either way, pretty typical Death Shadow stuff, except now it has Tarmogoyf, and sometimes Once Upon a Time. I think they run like a single Assassin's Trophy. Apparently, this pilot here, I think you would say that new Black Owl, I'm not particularly sure, is one of the founders, one of the brewers of this new variety of Death Shadow that has, I guess, Oko along with green. So opening hand was fine. It's actually kind of a cool Astrolabe opening hand because the swamp is suddenly much better because of the Astrolabe. The Astrolabe will also draw us another card if you've got the combo of the 2-drop with Ephemerate. So I felt pretty good about the opening hand. Of course, playing against Death Shadow, they could always Thoughtseize us on turn 1, make the hand significantly worse. If somebody does Thoughtseize you on turn 1, you very, very rarely, if ever, want to force it, because unless you just got like the perfect hand with redundant 2-drops or something, if they Thoughtseize us right now, we'd have to pitch Coiling Oracle anyway, and that's what they're going to take anyway. So it's going to be very rare that you'll want to force a Thoughtseize on turn 1. So Eternal Witness is a beautiful draw. We've got our land sort of sorted. Since I might need double green for Witness, I figured maybe I would run out the Vista first, get a forest, play out Astrolabe. Opponent did not Thoughtseize me on turn 1, obviously, and not trying to counter this Astrolabe. So the first 2 draws off the top of the deck, complementing the opening 7 very nicely. Opponent waited until their main phase to crack the Polluted Delta, so potentially short on lands. All right, they've got a Tarmogoyf. It's currently just a 1/2 with a couple lands in the graveyard. Well, Goose, the timing is a little bit awkward, but we'll see how it goes. I'm going to go with Oracle here. If Oracle hit a land there and ramped us, it would have been sensational, because then on turn 3, we could have like Ewit with Ephemerate. But we hit another Goose, so getting a little clunky, but we still have great cards in hand. Opponent plays an untapped Blood Crypt, goes down to 15, and they Tarfire the Oracle. That's a little rough because Tarfire has 2 types on it, and Oracle has another, so the Tarmogoyf is going to get substantially bigger, going from a 1/2 to a 4/5 with a single spell. Nothing I can do about this attack, so now I could have obviously pitched Force, but I'm not particularly afraid of the Tarmogoyf right now, and I'd much rather keep this Oracle in hand. It's the only card draw that I've got right now. So we take 4, draw a Vista. It's actually not bad. And I think the play here is to, let's see, Oracle revealed the Gilded Goose. So the opponent does know we have one of those in hand. The play here, I believe, is to flash in Coatl, try to trade with the Tarmogoyf. Next turn, we can probably get Witness going with Ephemerate. So with the Vista, actually, Coatl is going to have Death Touch already because we've got this Astrolabe. That's something that I don't always take into consideration, the fact that Astrolabe is, in fact, a snow permanent. Opponent plays a Bloodstained Mire, it goes to 14. Untapped, Overgrown Tomb going to 12. They attack with the Tarmogoyf, and I'm going to go ahead and crack this Vista. I got white. It's just one of the colors I didn't have. I've got a Misty Rainforest. I can get a blue source next turn. Possible I should have gotten blue. Go ahead and flash in the Coatl using the Astrolabe for blue mana. Drew another land. Not incredible. So the plan here is just, I think, to trade with the Tarmogoyf. Now, they're playing Temur Battle Rage, which is basically going to push damage with Trample anyway. And I decided that I would rather not lose my Coatl to save 1 point of damage. So after this Battle Rage resolves, I do decide to cast Ephemerate. Now, I don't have any other blue cards in hand to fight over anything the opponent might do. So they did Stubborn Denial the Ephemerate. I am going to trade with Tarmogoyf, which was sort of the point to begin with, and I don't really disagree with this line. Oh, my bad. He got first strike, I guess, so I didn't trade with him. Or double strike, so first strike plus regular damage. So that was a little bit rough, I guess, that the Ephemerate didn't resolve because Tarmogoyf got to kill the snake with first strike, and the Death Touch didn't actually do anything. So I go down to 7, taking all that trample damage. Opponent's still at 12. Second main phase, they play out a 1/1 Death Shadow. So falling a little bit behind on board, for sure. But up to this point, I think, everything has gone pretty smoothly. We had a turn 2 Oracle that got, I guess, Tar fired. Then we had Coatl that we tried to Ephemerate, and they had Battle Rage plus a counter spell. So pretty good cards out of the opponent. Even though I'm behind on board, they don't have a ton of power, certainly not lethal yet, and currently only 1 card in hand. So for me, the play here is Witness, get Ephemerate, and with the opponent on 1 card, hopefully we can just ghost block the biggest attacker. Now, I guess there's Gabe Nassif likes to say coward. Like, am I going to be a coward? The cowardly line here, I guess, would be to take like a Coatl, for example, to have a blue card to pitch for force. But with the opponent so low on cards, you don't really want to play too defensively. We are behind on board. We need to sort of play in such a way that would give us a chance to win the game. So opponent untaps, draws a card. Looks like it was Mishra's Bauble. They're going to look at the top of my deck. Tarmogoyf goes to 5/6 because of the artifact. And getting in with Death Shadow, without Death Shadow, just makes me think the opponent doesn't have removal. And they could have another Stubborn Denial, but nothing we can do about that to begin with. The fact that they're a 1 card makes it extremely unlikely that that's the 1 card they have. So I'm going to go ahead and finish up this line that I had planned. And yeah, the opponent didn't have anything for it. So now we can go ahead and take Coatl, and we're going to be able to start looping Ephemerate with Eternal Witness. DV Neil, I'm not concerned about blue count. I believe I think I went back down to 2 forces. And I think with that, I have 16 or 17 blue sources. So it's like pretty overkill. Sort of blue count per force. I actually added a 3rd back recently, but then I think I changed it back out. I don't think it's in for this game for sure. I'm pretty sure that the list that I'm showing in this replay is back on 2 forces. But the general rule is, I think you want like bare minimum 18, 19, 20, like somewhere around there. I can't, maybe it's 20 for the full 4 forces. So if you're running 2 or 3 and you've got, 16, 17, 18 blue sources, blue cards, then you're good to go. The point about countering the Battle Rage, I mean, I only had a Coatl in hand, and the point was to trade with him. I guess what you're saying is one of these geese could be a blue card or something, but even a lot of the Bant decks run dorks, so the hand wasn't going to have a blue card anyway, even if it was Bant at this, in this particular match. So I'm gonna go ahead and blink Eternal Witness. Let me check what you guys are saying. Well, there's no removal because Bauble was the new card, and they stubbed instead of casting removal last turn. Yeah, I mean, that was the read. So the opponent did have a Stubborn Denial there. That was interesting. We draw Siege Rhino for the turn. So, they just drew Stubborn Denial off of the redraw on the Mishra's Bauble. So that was fortuitous for the opponent. Play the Misty Rainforest, crack the Misty Rainforest. Actually going to get in with this Witness here. I don't think the opponent has the cojones to trade with the Death Shadow. And I had choices here. Looks like I wanted to take the opportunity to run out the geese. I can flash in Coatl and basically just build a bit of a board. And then with that established, I can run out Siege Rhino next turn. If I pass the turn now, I've got mana for Force available. And with Siege Rhino coming next turn, it's also there's a consideration with Siege Rhino that it makes Death Shadow bigger. So I didn't really want to make the Death Shadow bigger just yet. We do have Death Touch to flash in next turn, and again, the opponent is very low on cards. So it looks like they drew a land. Getting in with both of their guys. And I believe they should know that we have this Coatl in hand, since I did get it back from the graveyard. Drew another land, another Temple Garden. And I'm going to try to trade with the Death Shadow because they can just crack this right now and make this into a 6/6. Tarmogoyf's currently just a 5/6, and I'd rather not get my life total down to the point where I could get burnt out, either with a Kolaghan's Command or Lightning Bolt or a Tarfire. I think Tarfire does just 2 damage to anything, right? Yeah. All right, so that's how I chose to line things up. I don't really need two geese. Opponent didn't have anything for the Coatl, so we get that Death Shadow off the board. Teferi is a great draw. And let's see, with Goose, we're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then we play a land. We can actually play both of these things right now. So play an untapped Shock land. I'm going to start with Rhino. I thought a little bit one or the other. Like if I play Teferi and they do have another counter spell, they have to use it on Teferi, but they don't counter creatures anyway. They only have Stubborn Denial. So just run out Siege Rhino first. Without Death Shadow, I don't really have to worry. Without Death Shadow on the board anymore, I don't have to worry about growing it with Siege Rhino. So life total's equalized, and then I'll go ahead and get in with Eternal Witness again. Get the opponent down to 5. Play Teferi, sacking food, and the opponent just scooped at that point. So if we look real quick at my blue count, just to sort of get a real number, I've got the 8 snakes and then 2 forces, so that's 10. 3 of these guys is 13, 15, 17. Yeah, I mean, 17 blue cards for 2 forces is slightly overkill. So, I mean, I can hardcast it a lot of the time, and I can pitch a lot of the time, so it's felt fine. Even with more blue sources, you encounter situations where you occasionally don't have a blue card to pitch. I'm sure you guys know that. So that was game 1 against sort of Sultai splashing red or Grixis splashing green, Death Shadow. We see that to facilitate Tarmogoyf, the pilot is running Tarfire. It's just a card that gets 2 types into the graveyard really quickly. I think it's probably a singleton Tarfire. Temur Battle Rage, maybe a 2 of. I think that's pretty traditional. And yeah, everything else is pretty normal Death Shadow stuff. So that was game 1. I'll go ahead and check out game 2. So part of this replay is just to show you guys some gameplay. Another part is just for me to look through them again and see if I catch anything I didn't notice on the first go round. All right, so game 2 against Death Shadow. This is a pretty nice opening hand. It doesn't really get super wrecked by hand disruption, so it's got that going for it. 4 spells and 3 lands. Cycling Street Wraith, Cracking the Verdant Catacombs, Untapped Overgrown Tomb for Thoughtseize. Opponent down to 13 on turn 1. What do you guys think? I guess it depends on their hand, but what do you guys think they would most likely take from my hand here? I mean, Eternal Witness is a pretty obvious potential choice because it can get back whatever they take. Like if they take Ephemerate, I can get it back with Witness, etc. So I was thinking maybe they would take the Witness that has been a popular choice against Thoughtseize decks in the past, but in this case, the opponent took away the Veil of Summer. It's a great card in the matchup. Can't blame the opponent for taking it. It is one that I would be able to cast if they try to Thoughtseize me again next turn. Teferi's a great card. This is a slow opener, but it looks like we're going to have a little bit of time unless they keep hitting their life total and get down a big Death Shadow right away. All right, so this sort of justifies taking away the Veil of Summer, I guess. Opponent going for the Inquisition. And now I guess we can think about what they take this time. If you're the Death Shadow player. Again, we don't know their hand, and it certainly will affect what they take. So Witness remains a strong contender. But Teferi is actually really strong against Death Shadow. If they are playing with a hand that has an important team or battle rage, they need to commit it on their main phase. And if we have removal in response, we can just sort of blow them out. So they actually did take Teferi. Again, not really surprised. All right, so this slow hand continues to be slow, but the opponent's not really doing anything. I forgot to mention, they did keep a 1-lander with a bunch of hand disruption and some cycling with a turn 1 Street Wraith. So a little aggressive keep by the opponent, but they did find a breeding pool on turn 3. They play that untapped. And here we see a Tarmogoyf already as a 5/6. I'm going to get Overgrown Tomb, just take the opportunity to get the black mana online. I've got 2 more fetches in hand, so I can get whatever colors I want. So I drew a shock. The opponent knows about one of the Windswept Heaths from their hand disruption. So I think here I'm just going to play Witness and get back Teferi, because as I mentioned, it's just quite strong in the matchup. I can play Teferi, bounce the Tarmogoyf, draw a card, hopefully get my game going. Crack the Windswept Heath, get a basic Plains, just trying to keep my life total high. Play out Witness. We can play blue we can play Breeding Pool next turn for blue if we want to get Teferi down. Veil is another great choice to get back with Witness, but Teferi just seemed more significant to me right now. Okay, a Bauble. That's going to grow the Soulherder, I guess. Another Thoughtseize. They take the Ephemerate, interestingly. Points pretty clearly towards them having another Stubborn Denial in hand. Definitely not blocking. And with them holding up blue here, I feel like I'm definitely priced into playing a creature rather than a non-creature. So since I'm not blocking with Eternal Witness, I'll go ahead and attack. Opponent doesn't have a Death Shadow on board. And yeah, I mean, we can play Soulherder here and go and grab Ephemerate from the graveyard. Seems pretty strong. I'm not sure that the opponent has a lot of choices. Again, we don't know the content of their hand, and they're kind of stuck on 2 lands. So they played out a Thoughtseize, trying to disrupt what I was doing. They knew that I had at least Teferi to get rid of, and the Ephemerate's actually been here the whole time, as well as the Soulherder, but they took the Ephemerate rather than the Soulherder. All right, so we're blinking the Witness. We're getting back Ephemerate. Soulherder is growing a little bit. Okay, tapped Stomping Ground. Attacking, and at this point, I can try to block an Ephemerate. If they have a counter, I've got another value creature I can play out next turn in addition to Teferi to hopefully keep Soulherder sort of churning out value. But if I go for the Ephemerate here and they have a counterspell, it's really not that bad, I don't think. There it is. All right. So with let's see. I think this might have been a misplay here. They don't have blue up, so they can't counter Teferi. But if they have if they have a Fatal Push, now they can kill the Coiling Oracle on my turn. If I played out Teferi first, they wouldn't be able to do that. So that's just like a strict misplay there. And that's the value of making these replays or watching these replays is, yeah, look at that. Like, this is a line that would have been totally shut off if I had played Teferi first. So that's kind of fascinating. They could not have cast the push on Soulherder because it doesn't have Revolt triggered. So yeah, just a mistake on my part. So this is the first game that I've played in a long time with Teferi in the main deck. And even when I had Teferi in the main deck a while ago, I didn't get that many reps in with him, so I can definitely stand to improve my play. Now that was awesome because I bounced the Tarmogoyf, tapped my land a little bit suboptimally there. I probably should have tapped the forest and left up the Temple Garden because I only left myself with green. And you know, if I left up green-white, I would have, well, I don't have Ephemerate anyway, so it doesn't matter. But if let's see, if I drew an Ephemerate rather than a Gilded Goose and the opponent tries to remove the Soulherder on their turn, I could potentially save it with an Ephemerate. But drawing a Goose is amazing because I get to actually target it with Soulherder on the end step and make another food. All right, so Soulherder goes to 3/3. I think it can't be killed by Tar Fire anymore, so that's something. One plays a Verdant Catacombs, cracks it, goes down to 4. Immediately push the Soulherder, so that's a little bit rough, but we still got this Teferi on board. Opponent plays out the Tarmogoyf again. They've got one card left in hand, and Assassin's Trophy is a pretty nice card to draw. I can just take up Teferi, play my land, keep thinning the deck, and we'll just Assassin's Trophy the Tarmogoyf on their turn. With Teferi out, the opponent can't interact on the stack. So they tap some lands, think about what they want to do, and they go for Brutality on the Goose. In response, I'm going to make a food. I don't think there's anything much better that I can do in this spot. Maybe the opponent was thinking they're going to get Teferi off the board here, and I was just about getting ready to kill the Tarmogoyf on the main phase, or at the start of combat. But decided it would be much better to let to see whether they go to me or after Teferi with the Tarmogoyf. And they did go after me, which is just important information, I think. All right, so they got a forest. We're going to go ahead and crack one of these foods, gain a bit of life, get another fetch out of the deck. And Coiling Oracles, that's a good one. Get a creature on the board, a little bit of defense, a little bit of offense, and Winds of Abandon is kind of sweet because Teferi's uptick lets us cast sorceries on the opponent's turn. So if they play out a creature now, I can just Winds it right away. And they do. There's another Tarmogoyf. It's 5/6. Okay, so looks like they're passing the turn. I am going to cast this Winds. And the opponent is out of basics, so it looks like they only play one swamp and one forest. Opponent is at 4. I'll crack another food here. And another Assassin's Trophy. So pretty decent draws the last couple draw steps. I'm going to hit the opponent down to 3, and then I guess take Teferi up and pass the turn back. So what is the opponent playing here? They have a Dismember that they're just paying full price for to kill the Oracle. Can't blame them. They want to do that before I have a chance to draw into counter spells and ephemerates, like that one. Also, they can't do it on my turn, right? Because I've got Teferi out, so they just had to main phase that. I mean, if they had a higher life total, they might have waited for a better target, I guess, with the Dismember. But you know that Oracle was going to take them down in just 3 turns. So solid cards in hand right now. We just need to draw a creature. Opponent's going to trophy Teferi. Teferi did a great job. He's going to finish his work by getting a basic out of my deck. And there's the Coatl. So things going really well for us right now. So far, I think it's just been that misplay, running out the Oracle ahead of Teferi. Let's get Coatl in. If the opponent tries to remove it right away, I do have the Ephemerate. And the Goose at this point, this is one of the better spots where I've drawn Goose. Yeah, I was pretty lucky to just not draw lands for a little while. So play my shock here, and this is one of the better spots where I've had Goose, because later in a game like this, top decking, Goose can just gain life every single turn. Attack with the Coatl. I mean, I don't know. You're saying I drew everything. I don't know. I drew a removal spell and an Ephemerate. I could have drawn Soulherder or Siege Rhino or any number of other good cards. Worship. I mean, I'm just drawing cards. These are not like necessarily game-winning cards by themselves. Another Coiling Oracle. That was a good one. Get in for 1. Play out the Oracle. Another Ephemerate. Now, if the opponent has some kind of board wipe, I would probably spend one of the Ephemerates just to draw a card, since we don't have any other creatures in hand. Okay, they're going for the get back the Tarmogoyf, kill the Coatl line. But I do have the Ephemerate. The opponent actually knows that I have one of these because the Coiling Oracle just revealed it. But when I actually cast it, the opponent scooped. So so you say that you disagree with the Witness block. That was earlier in this game. I can go back to that. All right, so this was the turn. Opponent only had green and blue up, so I played an untapped shock. Played out Soulherder, blinked to get back the Ephemerate and pass the turn back. The opponent played a tapped Stomping Grounds and got in with the Tarmogoyf. Now my line here, I played around. Well, I mean, I had the previous turn. I had 2 very good choices. I had Teferi or Soulherder, and since there was the possibility that they could have had Stubborn Denial online with the blue mana, it seemed like a very clear choice to me to just run out Soulherder and get value blinking Eternal Witness. It's not like it was utterly critical for me to play around Disdainful Stroke. It was just an easy decision given the fact that they couldn't do anything about getting Soulherder on the board. So in this spot, this is where I line up the block, right? And so the thought process was, let's see, that if I Ephemerate and they counter, it's not a big deal because the following turn, if they have a disdainful, what is it called? It's called the Stubborn Denial. If they have a Stubborn Denial, I don't really care about them spending it on Ephemerate because getting down to Teferi is actually kind of strong in this matchup. I can bounce the Tarmogoyf, draw a card. I still got Soulherder to hopefully generate mana with Coiling Oracle, but I messed up the sequencing. So they did counter this, and I think getting it out of their hand is fine, actually. I mean, it is an important part of the value engine, but you know, it's... I understand the disagreement. If I didn't block, they would still have the Stubborn Denial in hand. So if I try to Ephemerate at any point, they could counter it. They could also counter the Teferi. So I don't know. The only real mistake that I see is just the stupid sequencing here. Like, and it is just pretty stupid. I mean, I know that Soulherder can't die to Fatal Push, so maybe that kind of lulled me into playing more creatures, or lured me into playing more creatures, lulled me into a false sense of confidence, and then yeah, I just lost the Coiling Oracle. Yeah, but as we saw in the game, they actually had two Fatal Pushes, this one and then one for Soulherder, so I didn't know that, I guess, during the game. But they had removal anyway. So I don't know that... I mean, I guess I did get 2 for 1, basically, right? I lost my Ephemerate and I lost the Witness. I just thought it seemed really important to get Teferi resolved, and if they have the Stubborn Denial, baiting it with Ephemerate seemed okay. The fact that they had 2 Fatal Pushes was a little bit rough. But fighting for resources, getting Teferi down, bouncing the Tarmogoyf, drawing a card, it all seemed pretty good. I got very lucky just drawing that Goose there. That was a big part of it. So anyhow, no, I really appreciate the observation. For sure, I'm not... I mean, I remember, if I don't block the Tarmogoyf there, I'm also taking 5, right? Going down to half my life total. I don't know how big a deal that is. They did draw another Tarmogoyf or 2, I believe. Well, they replay the one that they had. So that's a consideration, you know, like not putting ourselves... We saw Tarfire. We know they have Kolaghan's Command. Not putting us too close to burn range. I didn't have any more creatures in hand at this point, so I don't know. It was a close line. So yeah. Anyhow, a very, very interesting match. They didn't draw any Okos, which I was happy about if they were actually playing Oko, just because it just makes the game so grindy and frustrating. All right, so the next match that I'm going to show the replay of was against Crabvine. It's a dredgy deck that runs, I think it's Hedron Crab. To facilitate the graveyard. This is a really nice opening hand. Definitely going to keep this. Opponent mulligans to 6. I'll just get a forest and play Goose. Opponent plays Watery Grave and Hedron Crab. A Coiling Oracle is a good draw, but I'm going to use all of my mana this turn, I think. Get out Soulherder. This deck doesn't play a lot of removal. Play Soulherder, blink the Goose, make another food, grow the Soulherder. Next turn, I can potentially play both Coiling Oracles. I've got a Force in hand if they've got a non-creature spell to try to fill up the graveyard. Now, this guy, for the whole match, if I recall correctly, just hit the best dredges. I mean, or I guess that's what you can call it, a dredge, but a mill in this case. Vengevine Amalgam off the top, and we're going to see some more. Creeping Chill, Gravecrawler, another Amalgam. So out of what is it? I think 6 cards went to the graveyard, and it was Creeping Chill, Gravecrawler, 2 prized Amalgams, a Vengevine, and 1 land. So opponent plays a Carrion Feeder, and then they're going to be able to play the Gravecrawler, and then the Vengevine will come back, and then 2 prized Amalgams will come back. So pretty rough. At least they can only attack with the Vengevine for now. Clearly, I'm not going to block at this point. And then note that nothing they did that turn was non-creature, so Force couldn't do anything. All right, Prize Amalgams come back. I draw another Coiling Oracle. So pretty easy choice just to play out one of them. Icefang Coatl. So if I go and fetch another basic, we can turn on Death Touch, try to kill one of their attackers. Soulherder is going to grow a little bit here. So if he turns into a 3/3, he can block some 2-powered thing and still live. Ephemerate is really good in this matchup because Well, more against Dredge, I was thinking if they play Conflagrate, then, you know, they'll go like 2, 2, and 1 or something, and you ephemerate the Coiling Oracle to save it from the Conflagrate, and then Soulherder grows to a 3/3, and if they sent 2 damage at it, it just grows and kind of blows out their Conflagrate. So no attacks here. Even though they don't have great blocks, I think I am going to need Soulherder on blocking duty. So blink the Coiling Oracle. I hit a land, which is pretty sweet, actually. I mean, things are looking pretty grim here. They've got a huge board, and I've just got these dorks that I'm trying to throw under the bus. All right, so opponent continuing to do some milling with the Hedron Crab. All right, so these mills are not as good as the first couple mills, but they really want the first ones to be the good ones. So I'm just going to take this opportunity. I had super redundant snakes in my hand just to counter something to prevent them from hitting like more Vengevines off of that spell. So they get to play Gravecrawler out. I'm going to sack that to the Carrion Feeder. It's now a 3/3. Unfortunately, making it sort of difficult to block. All right, opponent's getting in for 13. I'm at 12. We could flash in the Coatl. Does have Death Touch because I did hit a 3rd Snowland. Yeah, we just have to not die here, basically. So I could trade something with the Soulherder, but that doesn't seem like a very good idea, since Soulherder is like the only thing kind of keeping me in this game, and if it can grow a little bit, it could potentially just get favorable blocks rather than just trading with something. So easy choice throwing the Coatl in front of the Carrion Feeder. This thing can grow, and it can also it doesn't come back from the graveyard, so blocking any of these things, they could potentially just get it back from the graveyard. And then I guess I'll throw the Coatl under the bus here in front of the Vengevine. Just set myself up to take 6 from the Amalgams. Down to 6. Opponent just plays a Gravecrawler from the graveyard. Gonna crack the fetch land, get a Hallowed Fountain for white mana. And Ephemerate was kind of a perfect draw there. I decided to run out Coiling Oracle here. It's going to give me something good to blink with Soulherder. Oko was a choice, is an option, but I didn't really see what Oko did for me in this spot. Another Coatl is kind of cool, but we don't have enough mana with Goose not having any food to be able to Coatl and Ephemerate. So blink the Oracle. Hit a Siege Rhino, so that's some potential life gain. And with Soulherder, we can double up on it. Glimpse is going to put 10 cards into their graveyard. That's kind of bonkers. Might as well close my graveyard, I guess. Wow, so 10 cards into their graveyard is just nuts because they hit a Narcomoeba, which is going to trigger 2 prized amalgams. And yeah, they're going to get in with this this kind of big army here. All right, so I'm at 5. Block the Vengevine, block a prize amalgam, and then try to ephemerate the Coiling Oracle, growing the Soulherder, saving the Coiling Oracle. And I'll just throw the Goose in front of the other prize amalgam to make sure I don't die to another Creeping Chill. So blinking Goose here is going to give me black mana next turn. So not going to save the Oracle. Soulherder becomes a 5/5. Vengevine bites the dust. I go down to 3, taking 2 from a Gravecrawler. Opponent's going to get 2 more prized amalgams. So, you know, I'm doing my best to hang on. These matchups against these crazy dredgy style decks seem really impossible, but I mean, they seem really impossible in sort of theory and concept when you just like do the math in your head about how our deck lines up against their deck. It also seems kind of super uphill while you're playing the matches, but I've found it to be not unwinnable. Like, if we can stabilize, if in my deck in particular, if I can stabilize, then I get my life gain going on with Oko or Siege Rhino. Now, this was unfortunate because I couldn't cast this Ephemerate, so I had to leave it in exile. Ultimately, I don't think it would have made a big difference, because blinking just doesn't do anything good for me here. If I knew that I was going to draw basic swamp here or something, then I probably would have blinked the goose, I guess. But as it stood, I needed to use the goose for black mana. Yeah, so Breeding Pool wasn't going to get the job done. So let's go ahead and get Siege Rhino out. Gonna gain me some life. I'm actually going to play the Breeding Pool untapped to flash in Coatl. Still can't attack with Soulherder, but I can gain a little bit more life with Siege Rhino. Siege Rhino is a pretty fantastic blocker. Okay, opponent with the Hedron Crab, continuing to mill. They find another Narcomoeba. More Hedron Crab action. Another Creeping Chill. I was talking about this on the Discord last night. I guess after I was playing this, or while I was playing it, that Creeping Chill I think is my least favorite card in Magic. It's not the most broken card ever printed, but it is one of the stupidest. Alright, so there's another 10 cards in their graveyard. They're down to 8 cards in their deck. They find an Narcomoeba, and what's left? They've got 2 cards in hand. Here's a Gravecrawler, and I just can't compete. They're getting back 3 Vengevines at this point, which is kind of unfortunate because I think I had blocks covered until these Vengevines, and yeah, I mean they might have edged me out anyway. I think if I had block. Yeah, I think it was almost Xaxes, I guess, right? No, it was a little bit more. But anyhow, I did my best in that game. We're probably going to lose most game ones to this kind of a deck. And yeah, I just scooped there. Anyhow, let's go ahead to game 2 here. I can show you my sideboard. It's been changing a little bit recently, so I'm not sure I'll be able to remember every single card, but I definitely brought in Stonehorn Dignitary. Definitely brought in Worship. Looks like I took out 2 Teferis. And the 4 Assassin's Trophies. So that's 6 cards out. And I would have brought in Winds of Abandon, Celestial Purge, Worship, Stonehorn Dignitary. What else? The top 4. And let's see, before I brought the Teferis into the main deck, I had a couple other cards in the sideboard that I had the Teferis in the sideboard. I'm confused. Let's go back to the replay. Maybe I'll draw the other 2 cards. But the big ones are the Worship and the Stonehorn Dignitary, I think, and the removal. So this hand is pretty nice. Got some sideboard stuff in it. Got a little bit of ramp if I want to get turn 2 Oko online. Opponent mulls to 5. This deck, super common for them to mulligan. It doesn't really affect them that much because all they have to do is find 1 card that mills and fills up their graveyard. So play Goose on turn 1. Opponent with the Crab. Okay. We drew another land, which is pretty solid. Means I can either go Oko now or save the food for Stonehorn Dignitary next turn, but you can't not play Oko on turn 2 if you have the option. This was one of the coward things that I saw Gabe Nassif mention today on his stream. I only watched like 1 game. I had to work this morning, but he had the turn 2 Oko, but the opponent had blue mana up, and he was asking if he should be a coward or not. He chose to play the Oko. They did have the Mystical Dispute, which was pretty rough, but you can never not play turn 2 Oko. The odds are just very much in your favor. Okay, so I chose to turn Hedron Crab into an Elk because they did mulligan to 5, and if Hedron Crab was the only way for them to fill up their graveyard, it seemed like a great play. They have another Hedron Crab, though, and probably another land and a fetch land. So we should open up their graveyard. Graveyard, their mill's not going quite as well this game. 5 lands in there right now. Tapped Overgrown Tomb, putting some better stuff, a Grave Crawler and a Prized Amalgam. They're probably going to get it, Oko, I'd imagine. So, drawn some good cards. Make a food, crack that for blue. And I think that now I can play Stonehorn Dignitary, just blank their next combat. And then you can see we have the loop sort of waiting to happen with Eternal Witness and Ephemerate in hand. So the opponent's not going to be able to attack next turn. Not that they have good attacks anyway into the Stonehorn Dignitary right now. All right, so Abrupt Decay on Oko. That's a great play for the opponent. Oko can just take over the game if he's left around. So best card off the top here would be a green source. So not quite, but we can play Coatl now to try to hit a land. And there it is. Pardon me. So now I think with the opponent tapped out, I don't think they have any way to interact anyway. Abrupt Decay only hits CMC 3 and less, right? So Stonehorn not susceptible to Abrupt Decay. And yeah, no attacks, opponent. Note that I'm behind on time by exactly 4 minutes at this point. And looping like this has a lot of triggers. Opponent's filling up their graveyard, but I'm not super concerned since I know I'm going to be able to blank their attack steps. They don't have any flyers yet, so I can start chipping in with Coatl. The rebound is going to hit the Stonehorn, so they are now 1 combat. Sometimes it seems like it asks me to target an opponent, and sometimes it doesn't ask me to target an opponent. Like right there, I don't think it asked me to target an opponent. All right, so Eternal Witness, going to get back Ephemerate. Go ahead and get in for 1. Pass to the opponent. They play a Narcomoeba from their hand, just to go in front of that Coatl, I guess. Could blink the Witness, get back something good from our graveyard. Crack that, get another shock out of the deck. Hit Eternal Witness, grab Ephemerate from the graveyard. Drew a land, not amazing. Blink the Stonehorn. Opponent can't attack next turn. Play out Oko, make a food. Attack anyway into the Narcomoeba. I mean, there's no sense just sort of sitting around. Got to get that guy off the board at some point. Hedron Crab. Opponent pretty light on lands. You can see that, you know, half the lands in their deck were just milled at the beginning. So I could have made a food here, honestly. Like, I need to be a little bit more aware of Goose being around. All right, looping Ephemerate again. We're going to target Stonehorn. Opponent still can't attack. I actually chose to trade a food for one of their amalgams here. The way we're going to win the game is just by overwhelming their board eventually. Possible I should have just turned the food into an elk, but chose to be a little bit sassy by taking their prize amalgam. Well, taking the amalgam actually removes a potential blocker from their side and puts an attacker onto my side. So here's Ephemerate. We drew another land. Lands, the draws haven't been so hot in the last couple turns, but really with a loop like this, it doesn't matter too much. Opponent mills. It's a Narcomoeba. That's another blocker for the flyer. They're going to get another prize amalgam back. That's just another one that I can steal. Opponent cracks the food. Note that my time is ticking down pretty rapidly. Drew another land. Make a food token with Oko. Should probably have turned it into an elk at this point. Opponent just milling. I guess in theory they could hit like every single Creeping Chill, but that doesn't quite do it because one of them just took me down to 12. Opponent can't attack. Gonna loop Ephemerate again. Soulherder is pretty sick, but it does add triggers, so things take even longer. Blink the Stonehorn. Make another food. I don't know why I wasn't making elks, honestly. Just making food for a while. I guess I was thinking I was going to trade creatures as I did earlier. So you know what? I think I blinked the Stonehorn there, but I already had one attack in the bank. So now they have, I think they're 2 attacks behind at this point. All right, loop the Ephemerate to another land. So get back Oko. I guess the opponent Abrupt Decayed Oko. I just missed that. So play Oko out. I think we're going back up to 2 attacks in the bank with Stonehorn. What do I have in the graveyard at this point that I could get back? I guess I could grab. The only thing to grab is a Coatl. And I should be making elks at this point. Or trading, or I should say, yeah, trading the food for another amalgam. Crack this to thin the deck. Hopefully draw fewer lands. Loop Ephemerate again. And we drew Worship, which is sort of interesting, but we've got this loop going on anyway. Now that Soulherder is a 7/7, I decided to attack here. The opponent did 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. They could have potentially just traded with the Soulherder here. Killed it. But they chose just to chump, which was sort of okay. Ephemerate Eternal Witness. Now with Soulherder on the battlefield, we don't need the Ephemerate to target Stonehorn because we can always just do that with Soulherder on the end step. Though I do have 1 attack in the bank. This is putting 2 now. And the Coatl is just going to contribute to the board. Not sure what I'm doing with Oko. I did make an Elk last turn. Flashed in Coatl, drew a Coiling Oracle. So now the draws are starting to go a little bit better. Lot of triggers to deal with. We've got a second Soulherder. Crack in for a bunch here. Opponent just lining up chumps while there's a trade with a food token. When Stitcher's Supplier hit the graveyard, it milled a little bit and they found a Narcomoeba, which is going to bring back their prized amalgam, which is pretty lucky on the opponent's part. There, I think I made another, let's see. Oh no, I stole their Hedron Elk. Gonna blink Eternal Witness, get back the Coatl, play out a Coiling Oracle. Opponent cracks a food. Coiling Oracle hits a land. Soulherder is gonna target Dignitary, and it's gonna target Coatl. So many triggers, everything on the stack. Soulherder is getting gigantic. I'm down to 6.5 minutes, doing my best to stay on top of the clock. Get back Ephemerate and keep drawing lands. Here is the Oracle. There's a Siege Rhino. That's a good one. I'm going to go ahead and Ephemerate the Siege Rhino right away. Get the clock ticking. Get in with anything of reasonable size. Opponent lines up blocks. Couple trades. Couple chumps. Opponent mills themselves a little bit more. Hits a Creeping Chill, but at this point that doesn't really matter. Opponent realizes, I'm pretty sure, that the writing's on the wall, but they're trying to get my clock as low as they can, which is totally reasonable. I have to be able to win within the allotted time. So still no attacks. Stonehorn getting blinked. Siege Rhino hitting the opponent's life total. They're running out of blockers. Currently, they only have the Narcomoeba on board. So get back Ephemerate. Drew another Ephemerate. Swinging with everybody. And yeah, they can only block like that, and they're going to take like 1,000 damage. So pretty cool game. I have to say, I really loved locking out their attack step. It was pretty awesome. We had every engine possible going. We had Oko, double Soulherder, the Ephemerate loop, Worship. So even though I knew pretty well that I was going to win that game, I think it took me, like, from the point where there was sort of no turning back from that direction, I think it still took me like 5, 6, 7 minutes to actually close out the game. So going into game 3, The Soulherder deck is only going to have 4 minutes and 44 seconds, which I have to say I wasn't very optimistic about. This is not a fast deck, in case you guys were unaware. But I thought I'd give it, the old college try. See if I could find something. Maybe the opponent mulls to 3 or something. So this is a reasonable opening hand. It doesn't have sideboard hate, but we can't mulligan this. It's pretty solid. Let's see. Opponent did mulligan to 5, but again, it's not unusual for these graveyard decks to mulligan. A water grave for Stitcher Supplier. Stitcher Supplier hits a Narcomoeba and a Prized Amalgam. So 5 power on turn 1. And me with a pretty slow hand here. All right, Venture Deeper. Creeping Chill. So if the opponent is trying to win quickly. When it's me that has very little time on my clock. All right, getting in for 5. And they do have another land. I thought maybe they had missed their land drop, and that was sort of the upside of them mulliganing to 5. But nope, there's a second land. All right, well, Ephemerate is the best card in the deck. So I do like drawing that. I'm going to go ahead and play Oracle here and just cross fingers and hope to hit a land. Get a little bit ahead. And I did. So that was pretty sweet. Opponent cracking the Bloodstained Mire, get an Overgrown Tomb. And Glimpse is going to throw 10 cards into their graveyard. They hit a Narcomoeba, but not too much else. There's a Gravecrawler and a bunch of lands. So, well, there is a Vengevine in there. But with only 2 lands, they've got 1 Gravecrawler. The Vengevine might not be a threat. Actually, so they have the Merfolk Secret Keeper, which is blue. They could cast 2 creatures next turn. The Vengevine could come back next turn. I went and fetched an untapped Hallowed Fountain. Opponent plays a Marsh Flats. I'm going to get in for 5. I am going to attempt to ghost block this Amalgam, Ephemerate, and hopefully get some value off the Coiling Oracle. Gilded Goose. Maybe the food can help me gain some life or something. Rebound. Let's do it again. Coiling Oracle. So this is how these games go. Like we're getting totally swarmed, and we're just doing little tricks, doing our best to keep our heads above water. The Siege Rhino is a pretty good one, but I've got choices here. Another option would be just to play like Witness, getting back Ephemerate, and then doing another Ghost Block kind of thing, but our life total is just too low here. If we only have 2 creatures blocking, we're taking 3. We're still sort of dead to Creeping Chill. So I decided to go with Siege Rhino here. It's an excellent blocker, gets me back up to 7 life. Opponent with the Verdant Catacombs. One card left in hand. Interesting attacks here. I guess they're really afraid of the Siege Rhino, but Narcomoebas are not good blockers against Siege Rhinos. So very easy choice to block one of the Prized Amalgams with the Siege Rhino. I think I'm going to go ahead and just chump the other Amalgam and just take 1. Opponent follows up with Gravecrawler. Now, I'm a little bit confused. They do have a Vengevine, and they do have this Secret Keeper in exile that they can cast. They could have gotten in with the Vengevine. I mean, I would have just eaten it with the Siege Rhino, but I would have taken 3 more damage from one of the Amalgams. And 3 more damage put me at 3. If they swung with the Narcomoebas as well, that would have taken me down to 1. Strange attacks by the opponent, potentially not optimal. So I do think it's time to get Witness in the game, get Ephemerate back. I can go ahead and swing with the Siege Rhino here because I do have the Ephemerate. Opponent blocks a Narcomoeba. I'm not sure they know that this thing has trample. Play out a Goose. Still have white up for Ephemerate. See if the lack of untapped Siege Rhino sort of lures the opponent into some kind of weird attack. Well, it is a weird attack. I'm not sure that they did that because of Siege Rhino, but it's possible. So we're going to go ahead and just blink this guy. Life total gets boosted again. You can see the power of Siege Rhino with Ephemerate. Kill this Gravecrawler, take 2, and at this point, I'm starting to feel pretty hopeful. I guess the Siege Rhino has the opponent pretty shook. They're just like not getting in like these aggro decks are supposed to get in. Yeah, no, that's a good question. I was looking like I played immediately after this round. I played another dredge deck, and it was a traditional dredge deck, which also has Narcomoebas, and I was blocking them all day with Gilded Goose. I think the only explanation there is that I kind of forgot that the Goose has 2 toughness. I'm so used to playing with Hierarch. So here's an Amalgam from hand. The opponent is totally forgotten that they have this Secret Keeper that they can cast. And why are they doing this second main phase? I guess they feel like they need blocks. But if they had gotten in with these Amalgams and the Vendrine, that would have been a lot of damage. So, Ephemerate, looping. I'm down under 3 minutes. Drew a Soulherder, which gets even more blinks. Breeding Pool untapped. Play out yet another body. Coiling Oracle. Blinking the Rhino. And then just, go to the end step, blink the Rhino again. Okay, they hard cast a Creeping Chill. And I think that's pretty much the game. It did gain them a bit of life, but we're going to get a rebounded Ephemerate, and I can cast another Siege Rhino or just blink at the end step. Opponent with the most tentative attacks, I don't even block because they're tapped out, and I'm not really afraid of anything. So yeah, just good habits. Even though I didn't need to, I'm going to get the Ephemerate back with Eternal Witness. Under 2 minutes left. Drew an Oko, pretty good card, but a little late to the game. And then I just decided to hardcast the second Siege Rhino, just cause. So I'm not sure that this Crabvine opponent played optimally. It's an extremely explosive deck, but I think that we don't really need to be super afraid of them. If we can stabilize, then it's just really, really hard for them to stay in the game. So it's just kind of that race to turn 4, turn 5, where if we can get a turn where we throw a Coatl in front of a Vengevine and Ephemerate it, blank their attack basically for a turn, generate value at the same time with Ephemerate, we're gonna have a good shot at being in the game. You know, you might draw a sideboard card like Winds of Abandon, and their whole board gets wiped, and the Soulherder becomes, I guess in this case it would be a 12/12. That's a great one. Obviously, Worship and Stonehorn Dignitary are pretty incredible, particularly since in this match I had the Ephemerate loop going in the 2 games that I won. So yeah. Anyhow, I do like playing with Rhino. It's a great card. Somebody mentioned recently trying out Wicked Wolf. It does have food synergies, so it's pretty interesting. And the guy who mentioned it to me on my YouTube channel, who mentioned Wicked Wolf, said that he went, I think, got first place at his FNM. He went like 3-0-1, but he didn't really tell me how Wicked Wolf itself did, like if it was just killing creatures left and right. But yeah, it seems like something that's worth testing. I'm not sure what I would replace in my list because it's a 4-drop. I mean, maybe I would trim a Rhino or something, but I mean, Wicked Wolf is like a big attacker, but it doesn't have trample, right? And we have Assassin's Trophy as removal and then more options from the sideboard. So I'm not super convinced that we need something like that in the main deck, but it is certainly a really powerful card. Just not sure we have space for it. So that was a replay of Grixis Green, Death Shadow, and how we sort of line up against it, and Crabvine here. If we go back to the deck list, I'll try to resize this window for all y'all. So this is what I'm working with right now. I decided to try trimming a couple of Okos for a couple of Teferis. I mean, power level wise, they're pretty similar. I think that people are like super ridiculously high on Oko right now, and that's where all of the calls for bannings come from. But I've played enough games against Oko at this point that I understand that you can win around Oko. He doesn't necessarily just shut things down. He can either gain life or he can make some elks, and both of those are pretty slow. And our deck kind of wants to be slow, right? So if a deck is doing that kind of slow stuff, where we're drawing 100 cards, getting Eternal Witness loops going, growing a gigantic Soulherder, Teferi, I mean, Teferi was everybody's favorite ban target before Oko came around, right? Like, how could this card have been printed? And now that Oko's around, people have sort of forgotten that this card is also pretty broken. Against so many decks, it's just crazy strong. We saw it in the replay against Death Shadow just now, where, you know, they had a choice of some great cards in my hand. They could have taken Eternal Witness or Soulherder, but they took the Teferi because it really disrupts what they're trying to do. You know, they don't have a lot of lands, right? So if we bounce a Tarmogoyf, even just a 2-drop, you know, they're often going to have to like take most of a turn off just to replay that Tarmogoyf. At the same time, we're drawing a card with Teferi, and maybe most important, you make them interact at sorcery speed, right? So if they have a Stubborn Denial in hand, or maybe even 2 Stubborn Denials, Teferi just sort of negates those cards in your hand. You guys know how this works. You know, we all play counter spells, so it's a very obnoxious card. Just extremely well-rounded and powerful. So I have had plenty of games where I've drawn like 3 or 4 Okos, and they just kind of sit in hand, and I just kind of pray that I draw a force so that I can pitch one of the Okos. And balancing the Planeswalkers like this seems like, you know, it could potentially just result in more powerful Planeswalker plays. Like, rather than playing out Oko and then drawing multiple Okos after that, play out an Oko and then play out Teferi, right? And then you're kind of sitting pretty, getting both of these guys doing their thing. So yeah, I'm giving it a shot. I've only played, I think, that one match so far. That was the one against Death Shadow. Everything else in the deck is the same. Still trying to feel out Goose and see if it's where I want to be. Blocking Narcomoebas is definitely like a thing with your O2. It's pretty nice. Nice upside to having an O2 flyer. Haven't gotten to explore that part of it too much. Just did play against that one traditional dredge deck that I mentioned after this Crabvine match. I did lose the traditional dredge match. It was pretty close though. Both games, like, again, it's kind of a struggle to stabilize, and it has a lot to do with what you draw of your sideboard cards. Like, if you can get Worship down, it's usually enough. So I have created food a few times with the Goose, but our deck is really mana hungry. Like, whether it's because we're holding up Coatl or Trophy or whatever, you guys have probably the same impression, I'd imagine, playing Soulherder. It's just like we always have tons of cards in hand, and we always want to play those cards in order to sort of keep our engine developing. And just because of that, you know, tapping 2 mana to make a food that then maybe lets you make mana the next turn is pretty clunky. It gets amazing when it's like turn 10 and nobody has any cards in their hand. Then you're just pulling further and further ahead each turn, gaining life. Like, then mana becomes a non-issue. But there's also turns at the beginning where you've played Goose on turn 1, then you play like an Oracle, the opponent tries to kill it or something, and you use the food to ephemerate it. Now turn 4 you untap, you want 4 mana, you've got a bunch of 2-drops. But you only have 3 because there's no food. Your mana dork can no longer make mana. And again, as I mentioned, because we're so mana hungry, always drawing cards, always trying to play spells, it could be like another 8 turns before the Gilded Goose makes any more mana. So a pretty significant downside to sort of balance its other upside. So got to keep testing it. It does have the food synergy with Oko, which is pretty beautiful. Could have food synergy with the wolf if anybody decided to sort of go all in on the wolf plan, see how it is. Sideboard feels good. Veil of Summer got taken out of my hand against Death Shadow. That was like their first choice because it counters hand disruption. It's pretty awesome. And that's it. Gonna keep grinding the deck. I'll definitely stream on Monday. Maybe I'll find some time this weekend. Just been loving the deck. It's a lot of fun, win or lose. I do have a video up on my YouTube channel where I show off a couple of custom deck boxes that I just received in the mail yesterday. So for holiday gifts or like things to do with money you might have gotten as gifts for the holidays, I have these really nice hardwood deck boxes, pretty big with metal clasps and dice trays. And the guy that makes them is super nice, so I love to send business his way. So if you guys want to head over to my YouTube channel and check out those deck boxes, I think you'll enjoy them. And yeah, with that, I'm going to retire this stream, and I'll catch you guys on the Discord. I'll see you